As many. The chair recognizes the member for Marco City.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I want to thank God for this opportunity to be in the House of Assembly once again. Support, first of all, this budget, but to do so not on my behalf, but on behalf of the people of Marco City. Mr. Speaker, in my involvement in political life, I've stated in this place before, and I'll state again, that the most important part of my political involvement is the work that I do in Marco City on behalf of the residents who've given me this opportunity. And I wish to say to them that it is an honor to continue to work with them and on their behalf. And to once again thank the team in Marco City and those persons who support us from throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and overseas with the various initiatives that we continue to carry out, not just in the community of Marco City, but throughout Grand Bahama. Mr. Speaker, we continue to work diligently. The work that we started in the aftermath of Hurricane Matthew, the work that we have continued after Dorian, working with various groups to land multiple planes, receive containers, contributions from persons in other countries and from persons in New Providence, and to work with residents regardless of their political persuasion. We certainly have a mantra in Marco City: we don't watch colors. And we recognize that our commitment is to people first. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have continued that work. We have run out of resources and we replenish it and continue to work. And we want residents to know that we'll continue to work with you, that you ought not suffer in silence, that if you have a need, reach out to us. We are candid. When we can help, we don't hesitate, we will help. If we're unable to, we try to be upfront about what our capacity is, but we will go and seek resources or refer to persons who have the capacity to help. We've done so with the most extensive feeding program in Grand Bahama. We do so sometimes quietly, other times. In order to give an account to those that have contributed, we document and we distribute the facts. We assist senior citizens through providing transportation, courteously donated by persons like Etrick Bow and others. We continue to assist, whether it's with various bills, when persons are at their last and the process to get them assistance is slow, we try to intervene to reduce any inconvenience residents of Marco City suffer. And while resources are not inexhaustible, we certainly attempt to find resources to touch as many. Our priority has been senior citizens and, of course, persons with disabilities and single parents. But we have assisted able-bodied men and women on an ongoing basis, and it has been an honor to be in a position to do so. The Deputy Speaker, we will continue this work as we did last week with roughly around 500 packages. We'll continue this week to assist persons who have been challenged. This week we will assist a number of persons who are in need of appliances so that we are able to help them get back to a life of normalcy. And we wish to thank Bahamians, both in the Bahamas as well as in particular in the Florida community, Bahamians who've come to the rescue of the community to assist to ensure that there is distribution of appliances for families who've lost it in Dorian. There are many houses that are on the surface structurally sound, but persons lost everything in it. And so we believe that we ought to stand in the gap and assist where we can. The Disaster Reconstruction Agency, we will work with Minister Lewis as well as K. Forbes Smith and the team to ensure that our members in our community are registered and they can get assistance with the small home repair. We've been very diligent when we discover that persons have not yet gotten assistance following up. And so we wish to thank all the staff members who have readily been assisting in getting members of our community registered and to ensure that they get that check in their hand, that they're able to get the requisite supplies. We'll continue to do so. Please contact that agency in order to get help. If you have problems, we have a team that's standing by, ready to assist you in getting registered so you could receive assistance. We've also been assisting in terms of ensuring that those persons who are looking for help from NIB, from social services, that we attempt where possible to walk persons through the process. It is not an inconvenience. And so please call us. If you text, in my case, if you don't see a blue tick, please call me to advise that you've sent a text. I will do my best to forward it to the relevant persons, and my colleagues can tell you we are simply relentless in Marco City. We will call you at strange times as well. My ministerial colleagues can let you know there is no shame in what we do. I'm not good at seeking assistance on my behalf, but for those of you who I serve, who I'm employed by, we will call at all hours to try and get assistance. So it's not a border. Please contact us. I work at my team. We work for you. And I wish to say to that team, some of whom have had issues themselves due to Dorian, thank you for making the sacrifice that you continue to make. And even in the midst of COVID-19, when we worked diligently here in New Providence on the emergency plan, the team that was on the ground still went out in the midst of COVID-19, despite the fears and the uncertainties, to assist residents in delivering packages, in ensuring that emergency utility issues and other issues that persons had, that we were able to meet many of those needs. And so, again, we stand with you. We identify with your pain, and we try to focus on the mission that we have signed up for. And so despite the frustrations many days, we feel your pain and anguish, and we recommend to all that is serving the community to do so as if unto God, for no other purpose. And so I've said to some of you residents, you would know when you call and you begin the recitation by indicating that you need help and how many votes are in the House. I've stopped each and every one of you at that sentence because it's absolutely irrelevant to me. We serve as if unto God. We don't serve because we're anticipating what happens a few years down the road. We know in the Bahamas, oftentimes you're as good as your last good deed anyways. So the issue is not about what will happen in an election. It's about knowing what your calling is in life and living up to that calling by trying to meet the needs of persons who need help. And I know that God has called me to help empower persons at every stage of my life. That has been my commitment. And so when I serve as if unto God. What you do later on is entirely up to you, and I'm not bothered by it, which is why in this place, since I've been here for 3 years, my focus has never been on and will never be primarily on the issue of election. For me to be talking about election year 1 in, year 2, year 3, is to look past the immediacy of the mission that we have, the job that we have to do to change people's lives. So Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will have an opportunity on multiple occasions to talk more specifically to the persons in Marco City. Just know, do not suffer in silence. We work for you. Call us if there is an issue. We will be straight up with you in our conversation, but we're here to serve you. And to those families that have lost loved ones, we will continue to do as we have been doing, to assist as you go through this difficult period, not just in terms of emotional support. We try to be very practical, knowing that the needs are in fact great. And so as we have been there, for dozens and dozens of families over these last 3 years. We'll continue to do so. Mr. Speaker, in my role as Minister with responsibility for agriculture and marine resources, Mr. Speaker, we've covered a lot of ground over the last year and a half. My task this afternoon is to briefly talk about the work we've been doing over the last calendar year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the ministry is a diverse one. We have responsibility for the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Marine Resources, the department responsible for cooperative development. We are also responsible for agriculture lands. There is quite a bit of acreage, not only in the Ministry of Agriculture's inventory, but also in BAIC's inventory. We are also responsible for what is one of the most incredible experience anyone would have, and that is sailing, in particular sloop sailing, regattas, and an incredible department with the regatta desk who also focus on homecomings and festivals. We have 3 state-owned enterprises that are also a part of our ministry: BAIC, the Bahamas Agriculture and Industrial Corporation, and of course, BAMSI, the institution tasked with conducting the requisite studies and research so that we can inform farmers and other stakeholders of best practices in the area of agriculture and marine sciences. And it is also the institution that we believe is the preeminent institution in the country in agriculture education. And as it grows, we expect it to have even greater impact on this sector. And of course, BASFA, the Bahamas Agriculture, Health and Food Safety Authority, that's been doing an incredible job with dynamic leadership. Mr. Mark Humes, the executive director. And of course, you have Mr. Christopher Worrell and their team who are setting important standards, protecting animal health, plant health, and food safety. This department has been doing a number of things I will come to during this discussion. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have worked diligently in the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources to address the internal customers' needs, to ensure that we are addressing the things that impact them so that they are in a better position to serve the community. We have met with the Department of Public Service and the Minister Brenzel Roll, who has been exceptional in assisting us, can tell you we have absolutely no difficulty in camping out at public service when necessary, to work with his staff, to walk through the various issues related to reclassification, transfers, increments, etc. And we want to say publicly to the Department of Public Personnel, we are appreciative of your patience with us. We know we have not been easy with you, but we know that many of our team members have suffered in silence and some not so silent because of the challenges that they have faced over the years. Our public service in many ways have been beaten down. Under successive administrations, we have hired because we have a broken system, far too many persons than the country can bear. Let's be real about that fact. And we have not often properly deployed people in a way where we have gotten the best out of them. So we have functioned in many ways as an employment agency. However, in the process of doing so, we have not been able to cost effectively and in a timely fashion meet the needs of our people. So frustrations have grown, and as it has grown, productivity has gone down. And so Mr. Speaker, coming into the ministry a year and a half ago, I sought to continue to work by my predecessor in addressing those human resources issues to let our people know that we care about them. We want them to succeed in their careers and to support their families, and therefore we'll fight for what they're entitled to, and we will challenge them to live up to their obligations as well, because what needs to be clear in the Bahamas is where there's rights, there are also responsibilities. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Cabinet of the Bahamas has heard our cry in Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources when we've made the point that we do not have sufficient technical team members to meet the needs of the stakeholders who we serve. And so both in agriculture and marine resources, we have had two of the most dramatic approvals that we have had in the ministry in the last 20 years. We've gotten approval to hire the requisite number of fisheries officers to ensure better enforcement, to ensure better compliance by our stakeholders. And I want to say to Cabinet colleagues, thank you for recognizing that we need far more qualified persons to do the work of protecting the marine environment. We are not merely a small island state. We are a big ocean state with a series of very important islands. And with 100,000 square miles of water, we have an obligation to protect our patrimony and to provide the personnel required. In agriculture, we have done the same thing. We've gotten approval to hire extension officers who are coming in qualified with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, in order to do this highly technical work in agriculture. And so we are grateful. We believe that you will see over time transformation in this sector because we are getting the personnel required. In addition, we have also brought on from the Bahamas Development Bank a chartered accountant who is helping to transform our business review committee, working with the team out of BAIC and other dimensions of our ministry. We are now finally picking up those cold files and dusting them off and reaching out to agribusiness persons to walk them through the process of getting their projects back on stream. We are now vetting projects far more quickly, and we are more responsive to the inquiries being made by the general public and the upsurge in interest in the agriculture and marine resources sector. We brought home a talented Bahamian who worked at the Food and Agriculture Organization in Rome, who's brought a considerable energy and brilliance to work on our extension services and to provide guidance in policy. And of course, we have a policy division that has been doing a yeoman's job in helping us make evidence-based decisions by commissioning a range of studies. And so over the last year and a half, we've quietly sought assistance from the Inter-American Development Bank, from the Food and Agriculture Organization, from CADI, which is the agriculture arm of CARICOM. We've also asked for assistance from IECA, which is the agriculture arm of the Organization of American States. As a result, we have commissioned and received the results of numerous studies as well as missions to the Bahamas that answer critical questions and give us the data needed so that we are not making decisions on the basis of suppositions, of conjecture, of some political bias, but we're making it on the basis of hard facts. And so it is this kind of approach to agriculture development that we believe is going to catalyze the sector. We've done so staying in close contact with all of our predecessors. We have sought to create in agriculture a politically neutral environment as best possible in this tribalistic country. What we have sought to do is at every turn where we make critical decisions that affect the future, the strategic direction in which agriculture goes, we have sought to seek input from former ministers. Renwood Wells is on speed dial and has been accommodating each time we have called. We've called Minister Gray. We've called, prior to his death, Tennyson Wells. Earl DeVoe is on speed dial. We have called persons who have worked in this sector so we could benefit from their wisdom and assistance in guiding what we are doing going forward. We believe that governments are continuous. I say to my colleagues that it's important not just to say that when you're sitting on the other side, but we must live it every single day. And so at the end of the day, we believe that by having the opposition look at the proposals that we are making, we are in a better position to benefit from them, and we don't get into unnecessary arguments in the public domain. And so I was grateful that they made time for us, and we, in fact, had a chance to share all of the issues that we are proposing to do as an administration. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is really against that backdrop I wish to fairly quickly and just to comfort those of you that see the pile of paper in front of me. I've just covered a substantial amount of the paper in what I've shared with you already. And so let me then move quickly to look for a moment at what we have sought to do in the aftermath of COVID. Speaker, you would notice I did not, in the traditional sense, go through the individual figures that are in every department in the ministry. I wish to take a different tack. And that tack is really to make the point that despite the cynicism many Bahamians have felt over the years about the future of agriculture, we ask you to take a fresh look at agriculture and marine resources, the sector. The contribution today, according to studies conducted by IDB and by others, clearly show that we are a small contributor to the gross domestic product of this country. However, we employ a significant number of Bahamians, and we have quite possibly the largest potential to be a contributor, not just to GDP, but to employment generation in this country if we get it right. If policymakers get it right, if stakeholders get it right, if the private sector gets it right, if the practitioners get it right. And so a part of this contribution today is to make the point that despite the cynicism you feel, because after 9/11, it was clear that we ought to have focused on food security, and we didn't. Bahamians are prone, in certain circumstances, to backslide. So in the moment, we are quite excited about the potential of a thing. We see as clear as day the necessity for food security and non-agriculture production of a wide range of products. But when the moment passes, when the shipping lanes were open again, when travel resumed, we went back to our dependence on tourism and financial services, both of whom, in recent times, it is clear, cannot be the pathway, cannot be the twin engines on which we solely rely to drive economic growth and development. There is a need for fundamental structural changes. And so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, agriculture and marine resources have been responsible historically for the development of a number of important communities throughout the archipelago. The revival of these communities, and in international parlance it is called, in terms of rural development, if there is to be rural development, there is a need for us to find those economic engines that have the potential to drive these communities. I submit today that agriculture and marine resources are the correct subsectors of this overall national economy to help drive the development of our family islands and now our urban centers. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this budget is correctly themed around the issue of resilience, ability to bounce back from adversity, which Bahamians have demonstrated over and over again. And our story is not unique. We're a part of a wider Caribbean community that has done the same. And so in agriculture, we seek to demonstrate with what has been allocated to us and forecast to be allocated to us through partnerships with other ministries. We hope to manifest for those we serve that resilience is possible. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the studies we conducted was a study by the IDB, which isolated about 77 agriculture items. So by number, we have a clear sense of what we are spending on items, whether it's fruits, vegetables, foliage, proteins, that is beef, pork, sheep, other small ruminants, poultry, all of these items, we have a good sense of what we're paying to import. And one of the clear indications of studies we've conducted is that we have the potential, out of the $600 million we're spending every year on fresh food and, of course, adding to it ornamentals, we have the potential to save substantially on the $600 million we're spending every year. We are a consumer-driven society, and if you were to add value-added products, you could throw in another $200 to $400 million, $1 billion that we're spending importing from around the world. And so, Mr. Speaker, to speak to a point raised by the deputy leader of the Progressive Liberal Party, and I share the view that import substitution alone is not enough, but it's important, and we agreed on that in our discussion. That it is important for us to grow and produce those items that we have the ability to produce. And so it is clear to us, based on the studies by IDB, that we do have the capacity to produce cost effectively at global standards in a sustainable and consistent manner, roughly around $200 million worth of products that I just showed you on that graph. 200 million. So when we invest in this sector, the private sector, when we invest in this sector, central government, by increasing the allocation to agriculture over the years to come, as we invest in this sector, that is practitioners, farmers and fishers and others, fine-tuning their craft, we have the potential to substitute over the short to medium term some $200 million. And if we create, as my colleague, my predecessor called for, an agriculture revolution, we have the capacity to begin to structurally change the economic base of this country that cannot continue to stand on tourism and financial services. Financial services is under assault from European countries in particular, the OECD and others. And just for the record, it wasn't the Minister of Finance that said it, was the Minister of Agriculture. The reality is the sector is under assault. And so the rules that they're applying to us, it is a moving goalpost that they don't apply to themselves. And tourism, which is extremely important for our development, has not been sufficiently integrated through linkages with other productive sectors of our society, such as agriculture. Vincent van der Poel Wallace said many years ago that even if we didn't get a single extra tourist, if in fact the tourists that were coming were eating the things that we produce, were using the matches and the candle and the mattresses in the room that we produce, we would reduce the economic leakage. That is 80 cents of every dollar that's going out the country to feed the sector. And so it is this transformation that we have to commit as a country to. And so this is not the nationalism of sitting home with expectation that our sovereign wealth fund will cut us a check, and while we sit doing very little. This is the kind of nationalism that says, yes, the sovereign wealth fund is extremely important, but it is only important to the extent that we do the hard work to deposit something in it. And so, Mr. Deputy, we have an opportunity, and we are happily working with Dionisio de Aguilar and Janet Johnson and the tourism team, establishing important linkages so that we are in a position to meet not just domestic demand, but also meet demand of the tourists that visit our country. And that's not merely a domestic operation or import substitution. It is in fact an export. Every time you feed a tourist, you are exporting Bahamian produce. And so in order to support this vision that is not a unique vision, the government of the Bahamas had to make several important policy determinations. One of the policy determinations that was made by the government is that we will require all of our importers, persons who are serving food to end users, to in fact source those foods from local producers. So Cabinet has said 40% of all food that will be consumed by persons in this country, tourists or Bahamians, must come from Bahamian producers. But in order for us to have the moral authority to do so, in order to have the moral authority to do so, the government itself must demonstrate through its own spending that it is prepared to support Bahamians. And so the Cabinet has approved that 75% of all money spent by various ministries and departments on food must come from locally produced food. It must come from Bahamian producers. And so we will put in place a robust monitoring system to make sure that we in fact do this. And so it's extremely important for us. It's extremely important for us. Yes, sir. It is extremely important for us that now that we have guaranteed market access, we must now ensure all along the value chain, that we plug the gaps that have hindered us from supplying the market. And so one of the things that BASFA has done, and I applaud the team, we have looked at processing, we have looked at market and receiving, we have looked at all of the areas at harvest and slaughtering. All of these are items along the food value chain. Right there. That's it. So we want to look from, these are the two that I want you to pay attention to, Mr. Deputy. Yeah, this right. These are the two. Yeah. Come on, hurry up, man. Mr. From pre-harvest to post-harvest, it is important for us to fix the gap that has hindered us from, one, getting our food into the food stores, the restaurants, the hotels, the cruise ships. That has hindered us from exporting in the numbers we used to export overseas. And all along the value chain, from pre-harvest to production to packaging to the logistics of getting items to the market where they need to go, to marketing them and, of course, selling them, we have to fix the gap. And that is the assignment that we have accepted, and we are challenging the public today to join us in this assignment. So let me quickly move. So the question, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is how do we do this? One, we have to introduce new technologies. And so the Bahamas government is committed to introducing new technologies that will, in fact, assist in the development of the agriculture sector. New technologies include having the right seeds, the right variety or breeds of animals. It includes also having the right certification. So if we are to get our foods into hotels, into food stores, on the cruise ship, in the international market, they want to be sure that their customers are protected. Therefore, there must be standard operating procedures in how we function. There must be traceability, that they must be able to know where was that product grown, or from what waters did you get it. Is it in a bountiful supply so that in a sustainable way you can continue to harvest it, deliver it to us without destroying the particular species. They want to know that you have the requisite certification, best agricultural practices, best manufacturing practices. And so we're working in BAMSI, we're working with universities overseas, we are working with a number of the multilateral organizations, whether it's CARDI, FAO, IECA, we're working with all of them to build the capacity of the sector so that our farmers and fishers would be in a position to get their products in the requisite location in order to earn foreign revenue for the Bahamas. We have the capacity to do it. Mr. Deputy Speaker, but apart from solving the right varieties, the appropriate seeds, and of course having the right certification and standard operating procedures, it is also important for us to solve the logistical issues that exist. Right now, today, it is very difficult to move agriculture products throughout the Family Islands into the most populated centers and in turn overseas. So there's a logistical issue with inter-island transportation, which represents an economic opportunity for entrepreneurs that are out there. It will make sense for them as we continue to ramp up the production of agricultural products. No one is going to dedicate money to a vessel that is half or a quarter full in terms of agricultural products. Similarly, we cannot, under the present system, transport the variety of items into New Providence, into Grand Bahama, the rest of the Bahamas and overseas, unless we have the correct cold chain facilities. Not all products are to be frozen, some are to be cool at a different temperature. We need dry storage, cool storage, frozen storage. And so what we have done is we've completed an inventory of the storage capacities throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We've looked at the cold chain storage facilities and we recognize they are inadequate at the moment. BAMSI, to its credit, has been using reefers to transport items from Family Islands to New Providence. However, this is not necessarily a sustainable proposition. And so we are simply making the point, Mr. Deputy, that we have an economic opportunity that the private sector in conjunction with the public sector must take advantage of. Mr. Deputy Speaker, so new technologies are important. Sensors that can assess soil moisture while you're at home on your cell rather than having to drive in the midst of COVID outside to go and check to see if your plants need to be watered at a particular time. Having portable weather stations that can serve smallholder farmers. Incidentally, Mr. Speaker, the work that this country has been doing in conjunction with IECA has guaranteed that IECA, along with Microsoft and the Ministry of Responsibility for Technology in Costa Rica, will transfer to the Bahamas a newly designed irrigation system as well as weather station to augment the work that we are already doing. New technologies are important. Setting up hydroponic systems, setting up aquaponic systems. All of these are part of the climate smart response to agriculture. Mr. Deputy Speaker, hydroponics and aquaponics give us a real opportunity at addressing several issues. Using smaller spaces for larger production, and of course, it assists us in attracting crop insurance. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have an opportunity to grow the agriculture and marine resources sector if we were to bring into it a new generation of farmers and fishers. When I came home from school, there was a gentleman who made a point to me, a minister in government, that I should consider going to program Shore and teaching agriculture. I've grown to respect and admire the gentleman, but back then, there was a simple misunderstanding. The assumption was that those that are not doing well academically are best suited for the agriculture sector. And incidentally, I quipped, I'm 6 credits away from a bachelor's in chemistry and a bachelor's in biology, by the way. Just so that they would know that it is not a field because you are perceived to be slow. And those that are insured are not there because they're slow. They have challenges, but they have the potential to be leaders of this country. And so we have to look at the sector in a different way. And the young Bahamians who have had the privilege to have meetings with in recent times in agriculture, they continue to demonstrate a restlessness about us doing business as usual. And I've had a chance to meet with the Agro Youth Network, who are doing incredible things, who we are partnering with in some very exciting projects. If agriculture and marine resources is going to change, a new blood has to be introduced. We ought to honor the veteran farmers and fishers, but we ought to integrate at every level in agriculture new energy and vision. That's why in the recent board appointments that we have made, you have a new crop of agriculturalists who will be reflected on those boards in cooperatives, in fisheries, and in agriculture. In fact, much of the $55 million earmarked for business persons will go to young entrepreneurs, not exclusively, but much of it will go to young entrepreneurs who are coming with bankable business plans and solutions for the new economy that we must construct as a nation. And so one of the things that we've committed to do is to put in place a youth cadet corps program so that we could train the next group of young people who will become agriculturalists, marine scientists. We are, through our summer programs, we are introducing them to the range of areas that they can get into in terms of this sector, including value-added products. Processing holds a huge potential for the Bahamian people. Most of us, unfortunately, on a daily basis, we are consuming value-added products, or what we call processed food. Listen, Bahamians are as talented as anyone else anywhere in the world. And we have to demonstrate it. As we say in Jonkanu, you don't sing it, you bring it. And one of the ways this government intends to bring it is to ensure that we help build the ecosystem for food processing. Many of our young people have a particular interest in this sector. And so new technologies attract our young people. The second thing that attracts them is the opportunity to engage in value-added products production. And so one of the things we are seeking to do is to continue to offer courses, and BAIC has done a yeoman's job as well as Keith Daly at the Food Technology Lab in conducting courses in growing a new generation of food processors. We intend to work in conjunction with UB as they strengthen their labs to also assist in this process. BASFA continues to do an incredible job in setting standards, not just for pre-harvest activities, not just for production activities, but even in the processing space. They are now putting in place a whole regime in ensuring that we are safe in terms of how we manufacture food, in much the same way we are safe in terms of how we grow food, in much the same way we're safe in determining what crosses the border to come into the country to feed our people. And so what we are seeking to do in the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources is to create a holistic, integrated ecosystem for agriculture and marine resources development. The days of departments working separately is over. We are breaking down the walls where silos exist to ensure that we are cooperative. In fact, our efforts are informed by recommendations from Ministry of Health. So one of the things that we benefited from, the former Minister of Health, who did an incredible job as Minister of Health, and I wish to salute you publicly and thank you for the incredible work that you have done, and I know you will continue to do in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Our food program has been driven by the recommendations from health in terms of the types of food we ought to eat as a country. And so when we looked at purchasing backyard gardening kits, when we looked at purchasing from overseas the hydroponic kits, we looked at those items that we know would contribute not just to providing the requisite amount of food required by Bahamians, but the right types of food for human health. And so our strategy of what we should focus on in terms of producing has been informed by what are the correct types of foods we need to consume. Secondly, what can we produce cost effectively in a sustainable way at global standards so that we can, in fact, reduce the amount of money going out of the country so that we can reduce economic leakage. And so I want to say to the staff at Ministry of Health, thank you so much for your guidance in terms of the appropriate kinds of food that we ought to be growing. Listen, buying Bahamian, supporting the 242 is the right thing to do. You know what's in your food, and it's fresher than anything that comes from anywhere else. Mr. Deputy, the reality is if agriculture is going to succeed, there is a need for financial resources. It's just a simple issue.
Bring it home now. Bring it home.
And so we have every confidence that the Small Business Development Center is going to work with farmers and fishers in order to help them dream bigger dreams that will be manifested because in a tangible way they have resources to dream them. We have the capacity, in our view, to generate significant employment. Right now in Grand Bahama and Abaco, there are thousands and thousands of pounds and tons of trees that are lying waste, waiting for composting, waiting for mulch to be created, waiting for some furniture to be manufactured. And we have been working diligently. I want to thank the Forestry Department and Minister Ferreira and his team for working with us diligently in designing work programs designed to utilize the waste that came from the most catastrophic disaster in our history in order to produce beautiful things and provide employment for our people. And so the funding that is available at the Small Business Development Center, we look forward to benefiting from that in the agriculture sector. We also look forward to working with the Bahamas Development Bank, who we believe have an important role to play in transforming this sector. And so we are eager to see a fully recapitalized development bank and to benefit from the expertise that they have there under the able leadership of Mr. Barnett and Mr. Dave Smith, so that we can jointly develop instruments, financial instruments that will catalyze the sector. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wish to turn my attention to a very critical component of funding. The Bahamas government has a tremendous amount of land that unfortunately has been misused over the years, and a lot of it is underutilized. We have persons who've gotten land, and I speak to my brothers and sisters out of complete love. The reality is, we have leased lands for agricultural purposes. We've instead grown roadside garages. We've grown apartments and houses, which we seek to will, though we don't have the ability to will them to the next generation. We have also built some wonderful edifices, and I have no doubt that persons have been saved in them. However, the reality is, in the initial agreement, it was for the purpose of agricultural development. We have been conducting an inventory of all lands, whether it's in the inventory of BAIC or the Department of Agriculture, in order to determine how the lands have been used. And I should stick a pin and make the point. We've looked at gender in terms of who pays the least fees faster on a regular basis, men or women. I think that's a no-brainer. We all know who win that one hands down. No, definitely not. Women have demonstrated tremendous control and discipline in honoring commitments relative to lease arrangements. The challenge we are having, however, is many persons are on lands that they are not adequately using. And so it's important for them to honor the agreement, and I once again wish to mention a very important policy decision made by the government. Agriculture has asked that the moratorium on the leasing of land be lifted so we can get on with the business of exploding this sector, and the Cabinet of the Bahamas has agreed, and I want to say thanks to my colleague, and now I want to say to the public, we are coming to make sure that you put the land under cultivation. We will support you through extension services, taking the science from BAMSI and the Gladstone Road Research Center and from others who have knowledge on best agriculture practices. But we need you then to put the land under cultivation or through animal husbandry to grow livestock for this country. We do intend to reclaim some of the land that persons are not in fact using, so that we can reallocate it to the new breed of agriculturalists and farmers who are rising up throughout New Providence and other family islands, but lack opportunity. Land should not be a constraint in our family islands, and in New Providence, we need to ensure that the new farmers, people who want to get into microgreens, who want to produce bush teas, persons who want to do the kind of work that Switch is doing, create beverages from a wide variety of fruits, we want to make sure that they get set up. And so we're coming to make sure that you do what you ought to with the land, and we assist you, and for those that are not, to reclaim some of that acreage to ensure that we can move on and produce in the agriculture sector. I think it is a non-starter for us to begin the discussion with you by saying where your house is, particularly brick and mortar structures that have been there for 30 years. I'm not entertaining personally the discussion about moving you. I think we find a way to deal with that particular issue, ensuring that whatever compensation is necessary, you deal with that. But all of the other land that has never had anything on it, we then need to reallocate. But I mentioned land. It is time in this country, yes, to do some bold things. To set up an agriculture fund that conveys government land into the fund, and that fund also has in it an inventory of bankable business plans that we deem through BAIC, through the Chamber of Commerce, through the best financial minds that would oversee this fund, that we deem them as things that are viable in terms of development to raise capital. The Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources is presently in discussion with some very smart people from the financial services sector about setting up such a fund and asking Cabinet, give us the latitude to take lands not being used at the moment, convey it into a fund, raise the necessary capital so we can fund equipment, so we can fund capacity building, so we could fund agriculture projects. What kinds of projects? Projects like growing algae that can produce biofuel, healthy snack, animal feed, to take fish waste and use it as animal feed, to take seaweed and convert it. So many things to fund sponging operations, so that we aren't only sending out raw material, we are in fact processing it, because we are just as smart as the people who we sending the raw sponge to in order for them to process it and make more money. To Cascarilla, we are working along with the Bahamas Development Bank. BAIC is leading the charge. The Department of Cooperative, CARDI, is offering assistance, where Michael will explode with Cascarilla development. The government of the Bahamas, through the Prime Minister, is going to approve an additional 100 acres for the residents, Acklands and Crooked Island, so that they can create a nursery to continue to grow Cascarilla, so that in a sustainable way we can harvest it, process it, extract the oil from it, and produce other items. We don't need to just be primary producers, sending to somebody else so that they can be secondary processors. We have the capacity to run a vertically integrated business proposition that will benefit our people with entry-level jobs as well as highly paid jobs. We deserve it, and we got to be bold about doing it. Funding remains the largest constraint, followed closely by lack of access to land. And so I'm happy that we're creating the ecosystem where the financial institutions, as well as the Department of Agriculture, will have an opportunity to fund particular operations that tie into the strategic vision of the country. We are going to produce a demand-driven agriculture sector. In other words, you don't produce just because you like it and you've been good at it and granddaddy and grandmommy did it. You do so because there is a clear market where you can sell it. I was encouraged in having the meeting with the members of the Progressive Liberal Party, the shadow for agriculture in the House, the lower and upper house, and the deputy leader, because I wanted to share with them some of the bold initiatives that the government was considering, and to make sure that we were not on a different page. And I'm pleased to say from the outset, we were not. One, we do not believe that the feed mill is serving the interests of the Bahamian farmer. It was a prototype, a pilot project that we converted into a going concern, and the going concern has not been benefiting the farmers who we serve. They deserve better. And therefore, I'd ask Cabinet to give us an opportunity to enter into a PPP with a private group, and that private group can be the group of farmers who presently use it. It can be a group of agribusiness, no matter what their subsector title is. It could be an investor, whomever it is, that we ought to enter into a public-private partnership, being careful to protect the concessionary rates we are already giving to farmers to make sure they are not disadvantaged, and giving the new owner latitude. They can now, rather than just produce a feed for a selected group of animals, they can expand into pet feed. They can petition the government for additional land so that they can produce the primary stock that goes into their feed mix. They could diversify however they determine. And to the credit of this administration, finally we are getting serious about the issue of public-private partnerships and divesting of these state-owned enterprises. So the feed mill, you will see the request for proposal will be released in the month of June. The second thing that we're going to do, and we encourage entrepreneurs, and other persons have already began calling us, that the packing houses, the government should not be in the business of packing houses. We should not set as a ceiling $9,000 as the sum total of what a farmer can make. We ought to build the capacity of our farmers so that they could go from field to fork on their own terms. That they don't have to go to a packing house, and if they've met their ceiling, they have to determine what they're going to do with their produce. We have to put them in a position where they know how to get to market, or we put them in contact with a distributor who can, much like Bahamas Food Services, purchase from them and sell to the end user. And so we are asking that we move towards a public-private partnership for all of the packing houses throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and we're asking farmers, we have a bias towards you if you have the right management. No, not the loudest management. Not the person who is the most visible. The person who has the business acumen to run a distribution chain. Who can take a packing house, add to the packing house a processing facility to convert produce into value-added products. And so processing isn't just about ensuring that if something is overripe, you can now convert it. It's about sometimes planting the right type of tomatoes that make the best tomato paste. We are saying that whoever takes over the packing house, you have the latitude to do a number of things to catalyze the sector and transform business for those farmers on the ground. And so the packing house. The third thing is, if we are going to ensure that the livestock sector is going to pop off, if it's going to succeed, there is a need for a functioning abattoir and a slaughterhouse system throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The government should not be in the business of running meat processing facilities and slaughterhouses. Let's put it through a public-private partnership in the hands of the private sector. And so we intend to issue an RFP as well on the slaughterhouse that we presently have, ensuring that the veterinary services would have oversight to make sure that the conditions in these slaughterhouses are sanitary and that we're protecting human health and, of course, animal health.
Private money.
And so we believe, and we are grateful that the team opposite supports the proposal, and so we are going to move ahead in a very transparent way, looking at public-private partnership. And so, in addition, Mr. Deputy, one of the additional things that we are committed to, and I want to thank Mark Humes and Carlton Boleg, who have been doing a yeoman's job. Mr. Deputy, in order for us, all along the value chain, all along the supply chain, in order for us to plug the gaps to ensure that Bahamians are able to get their products to the end user, there's a need for us to have consultation with all sectors so they can understand the ministry's vision and they can support. We have had a number of consultations, and Mark Humes have worked the member for Fort Charlotte has worked very closely with Janet Johnson in organizing consultations with hoteliers, and we are grateful to all the hoteliers who participated, with retail and wholesale food store owners or operators, so that we can have a common understanding in terms of what must happen in order for us to protect this economy. Because we believe that through buying Bahamian at global standards, sensible prices, assurance of sustainability, we are going to benefit this country overall. And they know it is in their interest to also support this initiative. And so we, through an amicable arrangement, is seeking to achieve greater penetration of Bahamian products for tourists as well as for our domestic population. One of the studies I mentioned earlier was a study by IDB that looked at boutique agriculture, Mr. Deputy. The study recommended several important things. One, I've mentioned before, the value of credit, the liberalization of land, so that Bahamians can have access to land, and increasingly we ought to make sure that Bahamian farmers get land at a fee simple basis. This business of leasing indefinitely for 21 years is something we must revisit as a country. What farmers and agri-business persons need, they need paper in their hand to go to financial institutions. And so we must look at divesting from the land and making sure that persons can purchase it. Now, if you're having a relationship, for example, with a multinational agriculture company that wishes to come in and do business, that's a different story. We hold on to our patrimony, and through a lease arrangement, we enter into a relationship with them. But the fellow who needs 5 acres, it has to be, we have to do it differently, and this cabinet, I have a clear sense, is ready to make those kinds of decisions. So in boutique agriculture, I mentioned land and credit. The other thing was they asked us, we need you to modernize your extension services. We need extension services where science is taking the farmers so that they can do what is appropriate. But here's the interesting thing. It also recommended something that's very special, that we needed to create a package of information on the demographics of the country, the profile of the agriculture sector, and go on the road show so we can attract investment to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. It is not only financial services that have the capacity to sell the Bahamas. It's not only the Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Agriculture, those persons responsible for light manufacturing ought to be equally at the table to make sure that we are saying to the world,
Minister of Agriculture.
we are saying to the world, we are saying that BAMSI is open for business. Is it production business? No. BAMSI is getting out of the food production business. BAMSI is best suited to continue to breed, to produce the next generation of farmers. BAMSI is in a position to produce short-term courses that empower already existing farmers. BAMSI is in a position to continue to work with Prescott Smith and the Flats Fishing Association so that we are in a position to produce a course that will train hundreds of young people in flats fishing to have a lucrative job in order to protect their family and our patrimony.
Yes.
BAMSI, incidentally, has developed such a course along with the association and the ministry to ensure that we train the next generation. And so I'm saying to all of our friends throughout the Family Islands who have boutique hotels, etc., Bahamians, non-Bahamians, we value all of you. But no, it is a non-negotiable that you do not have a guide on these vessels who is suitably trained so that Bahamians can earn a living sharing with you the absolute beauty and stunning features of the Bahamian flats. And so I wish to say that we have an opportunity in BAMSI to continue to explore these courses. And so what has been interesting, and again, another major policy decision, the Cabinet of the Bahamas has approved that BAMSI be treated in the same way as UB and BTVI. So free tuition and those other benefits will be a part of BAMSI's new school year in the fall. And I want to celebrate the board at BAMSI and to thank them for the service and do the same with BASFA and the same with BAIC. We appreciate you and we value for the long hours that you put in working along with the teams that work in the respective agencies that you are in charge of. We appreciate your effort. And so we believe that BAMSI should not be in the food production business. The food production business should be left to the private sector. Unfortunately, the board has agreed that while students' interests will be protected by ensuring that land is reserved for them to continue to do clinical trials of all types, that universities overseas, corporations are able in joint ventures to conduct necessary studies, the bulk of the acreage should be leased to the same persons who are in the AFP program or other farmers or agribusiness persons so that they could pay a lease arrangement and they could put the land under cultivation in order to earn real money that we need in order for us to reduce the amount of funds flowing out of this country, making somebody else's country rich. And so I want to thank the board for having the wisdom that we ought to change the paradigm by which we operate in North Andros. Let me also say, for years, I wish to speak with permission, Mr. North Andros, to some of your constituents. We have spent some time strategizing around how to solve the problem at Bartard in Andros. And Bartard, as many of you would know, some 2,000 acres allocated to original families for the purpose of agriculture. After 21 years, they would take possession of the land, etc. The short of the story is this. Both administrations have looked at this issue. All of the land is not and have not been under cultivation. However, persons have built homes and some persons are diligently farming in Bartard. How do we solve what is a vexing issue where persons do not have fee simple title to the land? So we sought to consult FNM and PLP ministers of agriculture. So I spoke with D. Alfred Gray, with Tennyson Wells, with Earl DeVoe, and I spoke also with Renwood Wells. Cabinet agreed that it will be unfair for somebody who has a house that is built on this land, their family have been there for years, to have any discussion about them moving. Therefore, it was determined that where their house is located, automatically, without any discussion, that ought to be conveyed fee simple title to those residents. What was also agreed, and again, this is why it was important for me to talk to members opposite about this issue. The question was, what else could we do? And what was said to me, and I'm not speaking out of school, by the minister from side opposite was, what you are proposing is certainly more generous than what we had considered, and that is, in the first, not the section with the 1 acre, but this part, that an additional 4 acres be conveyed at the end of the next 12 months if there's cultivation going on that parcel of land. So in essence, 5 acres are to be conveyed. Fee simple title, no issue to those residents. What else is possible? If the residents are minded to continue the cultivation for the remaining acreage, because they were given either 40-acre parcels or 80-acre parcels, they first of all have the first right of refusal on the other 35 if they got 5 acres, fee simple title, or the first right of refusal on the next 75 acres. And so what I've asked the Attorney General, Carlton, and myself have asked to do, let us move urgently to convey that land to these residents so that they don't have any uncertainty about this. And then, through the ministry, let us build their capacity to put the remaining acreage under cultivation so they can stay within those families that are there. But let's be clear. This is not about sentimental transferring of land. This is about, are we prepared to work the land to ensure ownership for the remaining acreage? And so that is going to be a significant step forward. Mr. Deputy Speaker, climate change is real. And the Bahamas has been devastated by a series of hurricanes, and these hurricanes are more frequent and even stronger. As I speak to you, I'm speaking to you coming out of a community where 9 out of 10 of my neighbors no longer reside because all of the houses were devastated. Few persons have gotten back home. The vast majority of us, including myself, are now either living in a condo where in one, you and your family in one room, the rest of your earthly possessions in another room. Some family members are with other family members. It is a serious challenge. In Grand Bahama, there are thousands of families, notwithstanding the dignity and strength of the people in Grand Bahama and Abaco, who are not wilding out despite the worst kinds of conditions under which they're living. There are some serious conditions they're dealing with every day. And so every time it rains, there are not only flashbacks, but there are people who are shifting furniture in their home. Climate change is for real. The agriculture and marine resources sector, we're experiencing it. We're experiencing it in many ways. One, salt intrusion. The farmers in East Grand Bahama were devastated, not just by the surges, but by oil on a number of their animals, by the soil being contaminated by salt, and in some cases, in the initial stages, by oil. The studies are, in fact, continuing. And so what we are seeking to do through the department with responsibility for policy and planning is to look at climate-smart technologies and practices that will help farmers, no matter where they reside in the Bahamas, make sensible choices about the type of agriculture, the type of equipment that they use, to help fishers make sensible decisions about what they do. And so we are conducting a number of workshops throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to equip those persons who work in government as well as those practitioners in the field of agriculture and marine resources. We believe that crop insurance is extremely important. We are having a number of fruitful discussions now, and we expect those discussions to pay dividends. Mr. Deputy Speaker, fisheries is an extremely important area in the Bahamas. And I want to come back to 2 other significant areas in agriculture, but I want to pause for a moment since we're on the issue of climate change. We lost in the aftermath of Dorian, two of the three most important economic centers in the country. In terms of fishing and agriculture, we lost one third of our national capacity. That's how serious it is. I'm grateful that the Small Business Development Center, IECA, CADI, the Food and Agriculture Organization, provided substantial help in terms of input for farmers and help for fishers. I also want to recognize a number of the NGOs like Global Medic, Bahamas Red Cross, Samaritan's Purse, and others who also assisted the sector. If we are going to rebuild the sector, it's important for us to have the right policy prescriptions, and secondly, to have the right programs to be put in place. So let's start with policy. One of the policies that have been in existence under both the Progressive Liberal Party and the Free National Movement is that only Bahamians are allowed to fish in Bahamian waters for commercial purposes. It's been a rule under the Progressive Liberal Party and the Free National Movement. What is interesting is that from time to time, ministers relax that arrangement. So there's been an expectation among some that it is okay for them to import talent from overseas. And most often, the talent has been imported from countries that have themselves fished out their own waters. No, it may not have been those individuals who they were seeking to bring here, but I can tell you it's been from the countries primarily who have fished out their waters. So from time to time, ministers have said, this year, since your business model is in place, etc., we are going to give you permission, but next year we're not going to approve compressor permit for your divers who are from overseas. When I came when I came in the chair, I had a similar conversation with commercial fishers, and I indicated we were not prepared a year from now to sign off on compressor permit for their divers. Mr. Deputy Speaker, today, as I stand here, a group of commercial operators who are operating in conjunction with their divers are suing the Commonwealth of the Bahamas government to permit non-Bahamians to go fishing in Bahamian waters. And we say to the commercial operators, though they are not named in the action, we say to them that we value you. We want you to succeed. We will do any number of things to work in your interest because we are your employee. What we cannot do is sign on to the proposition that a sector, one of the few sectors reserved for Bahamians, one of the few sectors reserved for Bahamians, that we are prepared now to provide a compressor permit in order for non-Bahamians to dive in Bahamian waters. So we have been inflexible on that issue. We don't intend to make an adjustment on that issue, and we look forward to the court date so that we can litigate this issue fully. What is also true, however, is that the political directorate of this country and the successive administration have been slow in putting in place the Fisheries Act, the amendment to the 1977 Act. We are finally finished with that. It is with the Law Reform Commission. And I've asked that we seek to have that done prayerfully before we break for summer, but certainly before the end of this year. There is no reason I can think of that we should not have the fisheries bill completed, sent to cabinet before this house so that we can protect 100,000 square miles of water and the multiplicity of economic opportunities that exist in the blue economy because God has blessed us with this geographical area. What we are also seeking to do in conjunction with the association responsible for flat fishing, is to bring into force a conservation fund so that we are able, through a public-private arrangement of this fund, raise the requisite resources in order to manage our marine environment, particularly the flat. The government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas does not have sufficient funds in order to manage our marine environment. Not the flats in its entirety, and not the marine protected areas. In fact, we had intended, and we will still, in fact, introduce, along with Minister Ferrer, we will work with the NGO community, the Bahamas National Trust, the Nature Conservancy, Brief, and all the others. We will seek to introduce additional marine protected areas. I believe the number was 43 we were looking at prior to this period. However, one of the things we are clear on is that there isn't sufficient money in the Treasury of the Bahamas for the full management of all those spaces. So we have to find creative ways to raise funds from persons who are friends of the environment, not just locally but internationally. The Conservation Fund, we believe, is the sure way to accomplish that, and we are committed to bringing that to force. In addition, we want to say to fishers that the iconic count, the iconic grouper are both under tremendous pressure and risk. We do not wish to suffer the fate of Florida and some of our other neighbors who've lost their count stock, who've lost various marine species in their water. For that reason, we are introducing measures to protect the count and to protect the iconic Bahamian or Nassau grouper. In terms of count, yes, we are aware that there are certain locations in the Bahamas, count is in ample supply. And Bahamians, we are some interesting people. We see one boat loaded down with count, and that becomes the basis on us claiming that there is no issue with count. But in the next breath, we are willing to say that we have to go further in deeper waters in order to find the same catch we used to get 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So we believe, one, it is important for us to end the export of count, and by 2022, we will no longer permit the export of count. Secondly, that persons who are traveling out of the Bahamas, a Bahamian, for example, will have a limit on the amount that they are able to carry. And if my memory serves me correct, I believe it is 10 pounds. Thirdly, we are prohibiting all persons on pleasure craft who are coming into the Bahamas with a cruising permit. Minister of Tourism, we are no longer permitting them to catch count. They can catch some other things. They can't catch count. Thirdly, we have to work out as a prerequisite for implementing this particular measure. We want inspections to be done at multiple locations throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, so that if you're traveling with count coming back in, whether you're going to Long Island, you're going to Eleuthera or to New Providence, you can get an inspection along the way. But what we need is for count to be landed in the shell. It is the only way. It is the only way we are able to determine the maturity of a count by its lip thickness. Not because it looks big. You know, we have some other situations where people get in trouble. Our parents can tell you one thing, but the reality is something else. So we need to determine, and therefore we're looking to have count landed in the shell. The other thing, as it relates to the Nassau grouper, we are utilizing a number of methods, including marine protected areas, particularly for those areas where there's an aggregation of the Nassau grouper, where persons will be prohibited from fishing in those particular areas. Also, to change the poundage, the size of the grouper, so that, again, persons are harvesting grouper in many instances and consuming it before it reaches childbearing age. The species cannot reproduce if it is consumed in its embryonic or in its growing stage. And so we wish to protect the grouper. So we're going to introduce, apart from public education, additional measures to protect the Bahamian grouper. I want to applaud the Department of Marine Resources, who have been conducting enforcement workshops, HACCP training. We've had a number of persons qualified, 21 just recently in Grand Bahama. Bahamians have the capacity to meet international standards so that we are able to export marine products overseas. We have, for the spiny lobster, obtained the Marine Stewardship Council designation, which clearly says that we are harvesting and managing the spiny lobster stock in a sustainable way. And so, again, I want to applaud those members in the private sector, the NGO community, government officials, the multi-sectoral approach in accomplishing that. That's the kind of designation we want for all of our marine species. We will work diligently in this budget year so that we can introduce new ways of generating revenue in the fishery sector. One, to look at the pelagic species. My predecessor, the Honorable Renwood Wells, talked constantly about the need to look at the variety of deep water species that we must go after, because we believe the new lobster, in other words, the new species, marine species that can provide revenue, much like the lobster, which represents 80% of our total income from fisheries export, that it's there. Deep water snappers, looking at certain types of tuna, of various types of fish that are not on the endangered list that we can harvest. We need that little thing from the Small Business Development Center to retrofit vessels so that they are in a position to go after the pelagic species. We need the assistance of the Bahamas Development Bank that can take an equity position in some of these new startup companies in order to make this happen. And so we believe that deep water species. Yeah. And so again, we believe that the future is bright for the fishery sector. Now, when we go into the various stores, we expect to see snappers from the Bahamas. We expect to see some grouper from the Bahamas, and we are going to enforce the law. It is unbelievable that in 2020, much of the fish consumed in hotels and many of the restaurants are still being exported from overseas. Imported from overseas. And the truth is, for some of the fish, they die in old age. And so we need to make sure we capture them. I'm also talking to my brothers, my friends, the children of my friends who are in communities, who right now you're going through a difficult time because the primary job you had is no longer available. This is time for us to be flexible. This is time for us to give fisheries a serious look as an occupation, to give aquaponics, hydroponics, other areas in agriculture a look. This is time for us as a population to be flexible and agile, to look at new opportunities for feeding our families. I just tell you a quick personal story. I remember when I worked for one of the big companies in Grand Bahama, and they made me available to my destiny. They laid me off. And I had the choice. I had the choice after that wonderful job whether I should return to New Providence, to the traffic, to the level of anger that existed in the streets at the time, like all of the things, right? Or should I stay? And I stayed. Actually, I met my wife. That helped a great deal. We were dating at the time, but on multiple levels. And Mr. Deputy, I wasn't working. I wasn't working at that place. I think I was laid off, and I don't want you all to interpret this as meaning I took it to heart the fact that I remembered it was the 18th of December. But I left there on the 18th of December, but on the 19th, I was working at one of the other industrial companies. But I was also doing some construction, and so I had Mr. Deputy, I had some pipes in my car. I had a BMW, but I would put pipes stand. It don't make no difference to me in the car. I just needed to get it to a place. And somebody called her and commented on it, say, out of concern. I saw Pinta and he had like PVC pipes sticking out the window of the car, right? And so she said she heard them and she understood where they were coming from. And she only smiled and said to herself, boy, my baby liked to work hard, eh? The point I'm making is, for me, the dignity of work is valuable. What the occupation is or how it appears to somebody who is looking on but don't have the responsibility of my mortgage payment, my light, my water, my rent. And so I'm saying to members of our community who are struggling at the moment, as we work collectively to create opportunities in this economy so that you could thrive, so that we could hit that reset button after 2 catastrophes, so that you could resume the journey to fulfilling your dreams and aspiration. Be flexible in terms of finding work that has dignity and value, where you're not being exploited and disrespected in order to support your family. It was a lesson I learned from my mother a long time ago. It has put me in good stead. So if I'm not here, in 2 years from now, I will certainly tell you, I will definitely do a play on the Parliament and another place where I sit as well if I'm not. But I'm just saying, you want to recognize that it is not in any human beings or any of these institutions that you live, move, and have your being. It is in the Almighty, and He will make a way for you to survive post-COVID, in the midst of COVID, post-Dorian, or any other hurricane that might come our way. Mr. Deputy, as I wrap up, I just want to touch on a couple of things that I believe is very important. Bahamians, we have the ability to increasingly feed ourselves. In less than 36 months, we can be self-sufficient in egg production. That's part of why, as a part of our emergency food program, we are importing chicks and buying chicks locally from Justin Taylor to distribute, to assist as a subsidy, because the Bahamas agriculture subsidy package is extremely low. That is why we are going, by the end of the year, our goal is to import no less than 30,000 chicks to assist the egg production business. Fortunately, we have some significant players that are coming forth now that are going to enter the market, some of whom are coming with resources. Poultry, we have the ability, over the course of the next 24 months, in a substantial way, to not only enter, but to explode the poultry market. I do not believe that we ought to be tinkering around the edges. 1%, 3%, 5%, 6%, 7%. We have the ability to scale up operations that we are contemplating, and we ought to do so that we enter this market now that we have a guaranteed market due to the policy of the government. We ought to work in tandem with each other. The Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, CADI, ICA, the Bahamas Development Bank, the Small Business Development Center, and the private sector groups that have come forth to say they are interested in poultry production. The same is true for swine production. And I apologize to those persons who don't eat pork. I don't either, but a lot of people love the meat. So the reality is, it is a sector. It is a sector that has the potential to explode. And therefore, we are going through the National Slaughterhouse Program, through the assistance of veterinarian services, who are now, I want to congratulate the veterinarians who will, over the course of the next few months, be delivering their programs through telemedicine. We are going to help expand this sector. The Gladstone Road Research Center is working diligently. So is BAMSI, to conduct the necessary trials to determine what are the best breeds, whether it's small ruminants or swine, that we can, in fact, use in order to grow our livestock industry. We are grateful. We're grateful to the multilaterals who have been working with us, and there are 2 of them I wish to acknowledge, 2 NGOs. One of them is the Volcani Institute out of Israel, who, by way of the Volcani Partnership International, is going to assist the Bahamas in a very exciting project. We've been in discussions with a group out of the Netherlands as well. The Netherlands. I think that's Mr. Diagula's, the home of your wife. So colleagues, this project is a project that's very exciting for us. We intend, in New Providence, to take, in the case of New Providence, 15 to 25 acres, and we hope to clear the land this week. And so I want to thank my colleagues for facilitating rapid movement on this project. And what we seek to do is to create an agro-village, giving young farmers in particular an opportunity to set up their operations using greenhouses, shade houses, polytunnels, open fields, in order to grow a wide range of crops. So the first slide that I showed the 77 top items. We want to take those items that we have real potential in a cost-effective way to develop. And under greenhouse, we want to develop models of what is possible so that we can replicate these kinds of operations. And so some of the persons who we're talking to, some of them are educators, others are agriculture consultants, young, talented, gifted Bahamians. Shomakan Cargill, Sakita Bethel, Justin Taylor. So many young people who are ready to explore this sector. Persons who want to do value-added products. Others who have already perfected it, like Mervyn Sweeting. Wonderful switch to drink, eh? Other talented Bahamians like Lincoln Deal and his part. The bottom line is we want to collaborate with a cross-section of Bahamians to create a space where fruits and vegetables are being grown, where seedlings and cuttings are being grown, where persons are doing composting, creating animal feed, fertilizers, not just the traditional meat production, but rabbit production, ornamental fish production, looking at hatcheries, a whole range of items. We want this to be solar powered. We're talking with a company now that is prepared to offer solar power at 12 cents a kilowatt. So we've sent them the proposal, and we are looking forward to forming solid partnership with the Volcani International Partnerships, and by extension, the Volcani Institute that has guided Israeli development in terms of its agriculture space. We are looking forward to collaborating with the NGOs that work in tandem with the government in the Netherlands. And we're talking with any number of solar providers, inclusive of Safe Haven Solutions. We want to hear from you if you believe you can add. Imagine for a moment, Adil, this is a destination for your guests, our guests. Coming in, they're going through a welcome center where you have a retail section to purchase all things Bahamian relative to produce. You can sit at a deli and you can consume what came from the field on your fork. You can drink, not libations that some people immediately thought about, but smoothies and other drinks produced right here in this field. You have a computer lab where you could be online with ICA or CADI or FAO. You are able, incidentally, I should mention, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the largest multinational or multilateral organization in the world under the UN system, has agreed to set up an agri-tech, agri-business incubator in the Bahamas to service this region. They've also agreed to allow the Bahamas to implement their first hackathon. And so imagine for a moment, you're able to actually be workshopped, mentored by these persons who've perfected beverage creation, who've perfected food processing. We intend to put in place a laboratory to do soil testing, food testing, etc. We intend to put in place a small parking houses. All of these are investment opportunities for persons in the agribusiness space. We wish to replicate this to have this on 6 islands, inclusive of Eleuthera, Abaco, Grand Bahama, Exuma, Andros, and of course, New Providence. The bottom line is, imagine a cluster of smart farms working in a cooperative way, sharing best practices, demonstrating the importance of biosecurity to make sure pests are not coming in, who are informing the sector policy makers about what are the appropriate decisions to make in order to benefit their sector. And so this is a project that we are excited about. We believe we have the capacity to raise the funds. I've been talking with the Minister of Works in terms of looking at capital works, getting assistance in putting together the infrastructure, and at least 55% now of the persons interested in this project are coming to the table with complete funding. They don't need anything from us. The beverage company that's interested in running a drive-through beverage company, you want to pick up your water, you drive through. They're coming with full money. The only thing they're waiting on is for us to break ground and get started. They don't need nothing from us. Equipment is already purchased. So we have a number of persons in this. So if you're talking to guys who are bringing in containers in order to do hydroponic projects with microgreens, They don't need anything from us. They just want the land. Are you ready? Let's roll. And so we are excited about the enthusiasm that is in the marketplace in order to develop the sector. I want to salute the fishers who have been patient, and I want to say to them, fish markets will soon be back in full swing, and we'll continue to fight for your right to be protected from illegal fishing in the north and poachers in the south. I believe that this is one of the boats that we promised that we are going to sink. We're going to sink boats. And so let's just say boats that come from other countries, just an example, boats that come from other countries, illegally fishing in our water, we made a determination that we want to prosecute, particularly the captains and the engineers. We want to go after the beneficial owners of these vessels. We regret that we have to fine and jail struggling young men who are trying to feed their family from their country, but we have to enforce our law. So our fight is not with them, but those people who benefit, whether they are Americans, Bahamians, Dominicans, or whomever. We want to applaud the Defense Force for the work that they have been doing in interdicting these vessels. We want to applaud the other countries that have been working with us. But we intend to sink these vessels, and we want to explain to the public, we cannot sell these big vessels to Bahamians, because the cost of fuel chasing down a vessel that's no longer in the hands of a poacher actually costs more than the money the government, the Ministry of Finance would earn on these vessels. So I'm just using as an example, all vessels. No, if you sell a Dominican vessel that has a distinctive look, think about your best figure that you can get. And I'm saying to you, the time the Defense Force takes going after them, what they lose in human hour and they lose in fuel, going after a vessel only to discover it's a Bahamian vessel is not worth it. You are getting infinitely less money for the vessel. And I don't have to guess, but by the way, as I do with you all the time, Mr. Leader, we got the fact. We talk with them. What are you spending going after them? How often are you on a wild goose chase? It is not worth it. And yes, by all means.
Chair recognizes Ken Allen from South Florida.
Am I understanding that the policy of which you are now stating to destroy the vessels once they're caught illegally poaching is rooted in the fact that if it were to be resold, where you could recoup some of your costs for arresting them, is rooted in the fact that if it is sold over him and it goes out there, it may be mistaken as a poaching vessel again.
Yes.
I would have thought that you could reconfigure, rethink, and so we identify the that challenge would happen.
Yeah. In fact, the view that you have is the view the view that you have is in fact the view that I had, because that was my argument. When the fishers first raised it, I said, no, I'm not into the sensationalism and etc. I have no interest in that. And then I said, hold on, my boss talking to me, let me go do the research. And I went and just ask the question, how often do you get calls that you end up going after a vessel in its configuration, same configuration? It's fairly regular. Secondly, those vessels are often very old vessels. Right, yeah, this is what I'm saying. They're very old vessels, and the average Bahamian the average Bahamian fisherman is not going to invest in those for commercial purposes. We then said, we'll just get it for BAMSI, to help BAMSI with its research, etc. Because reconfiguring them are very difficult. If you do an inspection of the ones that are there, I mean, they're not going to serve you much purpose on a commercial basis in any event. Yeah. No problem. But again, the figures are pretty small. And I know you're all pocket donkey, so those figures wouldn't be attractive to you. But it's small figures. It's not the kind of figures that would entice you at all. These are very small figures. And so again, we are going to continue with that program. I also want to mention, as it relates to BAMSI, the goal is to complete for the fall semester all of the various buildings. The teams, as as all of you know, small country, are working diligently on all of the centers to make sure that that we are open for the new semester. So we've been very bullish at the ministry. We've been very bullish at the ministry. We believe it is important that we discontinue having to rent facilities for the students in the community. They are having to eat elsewhere. We ought to get them in these facilities, finish them. Let's get on with the business of educating our young people. And so I want to applaud the team, Dr. Hannah and the team, for the work that they're doing, to the board and all of the persons who are employed, and then of course to Parliamentary Secretary Boleg, who has charge of BAMSI. Thank you very much for all of the work you all continue to do. As I would have had discussions with colleagues and of course members opposite with respect to the crab vendors, we have sought to get the word out to all the members of Parliament and all the vendors to please use the locations. The Member of Parliament for St. Barnabas has been very helpful in that regard, and Donnelly Bowen, her entire team, etc. And we are seeking to do a similar thing nationally as it relates to roadside vendors. So we have formed an intersectoral committee that would include Ministry of the Environment, Ministry of Health, National Security, all of the Ministry of Works, and Beaches and Park, of course, in order for us to designate some locations where people can be, so that vendors are not in the front of people's private establishment. They're not. They are only in locations where we could designate, and we work out with vendors in advance of making the decision what the protocols are going to be, so that no one is disadvantaged or no one is displaced. In cases where people already have attractive vending booths, we want them not to be stationary, so that people can come to a location, they can set up their operation, and they can leave, so that we don't have the continued proliferation of booths all around wherever people decide to build. Because the real question, if the public asks us, why Mr. Johnson is able to have that booth there, but you are restricting me from having a booth here? It's a question that people ask continually, and we need to have a proper rationale for why we're doing what we're doing. So one of the things that we are in the preliminary stage of doing, and obviously health has some serious concerns in terms of unregulated vending. And so what we're seeking to do is to ensure, for health reasons, for zoning purposes, for ease of the flow of traffic, so that traffic is not being held up, blocked, etc., for vending purposes, we want to organize some zones, have discussions with existing vendors, come to an agreement in terms of where they would be located, the kinds of operations that they would set up. So I've been working with a couple of architects in conversations, and these are proposed structures that we're just contemplating at the moment. These are working documents, so that we can look at two models. A model that you could hook up to your car, drive to the location, set up, do your business, and then head home, as opposed to makeshift operations that continue to expand. I won't identify any at the moment. I won't identify any at the moment, but I think you all have seen some that have been growing exponentially over the last several months. And this is a second model. So we're looking at multiple models, and to work out a work program. Imagine for a moment we have some young people who are building these under the supervision of the architect or the engineer. Imagine that. So you're creating employment opportunities. Then there's somebody who might be in Baintown, for example, and the zone you set up is close to Baintown or St. Barnabas, and they can roll this one. Some you connect to your car, others that you roll. So it's good in terms of its appearance, the aesthetic value. You take into consideration the health concerns, etc., and so on. So this is where we're headed with respect to the vending program. Also, with respect to Arwaki and to Portaski, we hope to have those open in very short order. A number of the vendors, I'm advised, are already going through the food handlers course, etc. It's been a long time with them being closed, and we want them to be open. We also want them to transition also to takeout, so that never again we could have other restaurants doing takeout and not our key and not Potter's Key as well. We want to make sure that they are able also to benefit. And so I want to thank all of the vendors for their patience. Montague Ramp as well. I had a chance to talk with some of them, but I know they would have met with the team. We want to make sure that we clean up Montague Ramp. It's unacceptable. The count shells, the garbage that are in back of the operation, we want to have that clean up. I've asked the PS to look at us engaging in a contract, get some quotes in. Let's help clean that up. The vendors have to play a role in that as well. We'll continue to talk with colleagues about working out an arrangement on whether or not a seawall there is the appropriate fix to prevent the flooding. I do not know the technical or engineering answer. I do know that that is a matter that we need to solve out there. And so colleagues, I think we have tremendous opportunities within this sector. I'm calling on all Bahamians to take a fresh look at food security, food sovereignty in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I'm asking you to support our farmers and our fishers. When you go to the food store, if I go to the store out west, if I am going to buy tomatoes, it better come from Lucayan Tropical. If you know a sign in there that tells me it's Bahamian, or as I did on last Saturday, went to Gladstone Road to get some plantain and some other produce from Bahamians, some guava jam and etc. We ought to look at the farmers market as locations to shop. And if we're going to all of our food stores and restaurants, we want to support those businesses that recognize the value of supporting things Bahamian. We want to also encourage farmers and fishers to basically make sure that you are attending the various courses that we put on to ensure that you have the requisite certification, that nobody can block you from getting your food into restaurants, into hotels, and of course, cruise ships. Members of the private sector, over the course of the next few weeks, we'll be coming to you, seeking your support, looking at blended financing for the agriculture and marine resources sector, and we are encouraging you to support things Bahamian. The NTA, we want to say to the NTA and the Defense Force, thanks again for helping us design the divers program so that we increase the number of Bahamian divers available to be on fishing vessels in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I want to also say to those members of the land unit, be encouraged. You're going to see them in Gladstone Road very shortly with additional inspections of farms. We are commencing additional work on Bonefish Pond Road in order to fix the road out there. We'll continue the work there. We will also continue the work with the various non-governmental organizations that looking at the stony coral tissue loss disease that exists on the southern part of Grand Bahama. This is a very serious threat to our marine environment, both tourism and fisheries. It is a potentially catastrophic occurrence in Bahamian waters, and we are going to be working diligently with the NGO community, locally and internationally, to address this particular issue and to make sure we do not lose any more coral throughout the rest of the Bahamas. We are also working with international organizations to address the cane toad issue, which has arisen again in the Bahamas. We believe that this is a serious threat that we have, but we have been conducting workshops along with IECA to prepare Bahamians to address this particular issue. And then, of course, finally, I would like to say special thanks to all of our partners. The NOAA agency that has been assisting us with the implementation of port state measures, all of the multilaterals who've worked with us on dealing with IUU fishing, that is illegal, unregulated, unreported reported fishing. I want to thank those software developers who we have commenced conversation with in order for us to put in place a management information system for data that we collect on the agriculture and marine resources sector. We want all of our decisions to be evidence-based, and so we are grateful to those agencies, IDB, IECA, FAO, that's been assisting us, CARICOM as well, with the data system FISMIS that's used by the Department of Marine Resources, the new app that has been developed by IDB that should be through with its beta testing, as well as the app developed by IECA. We want to express our gratitude to those partners as well, those partners in the private sector who have also come on board to assist the department. We also wish to say a special thanks with you. I want to support this budget, as I believe my colleague opposite will as well. This is, I'm sorry? Well, a couple of things. I think you missed that part of the presentation. I commented, I commented on that quite firmly, but also the tone of this presentation is that, and it's the same philosophy I use in Marco City, Mr. Leader opposite, that where there is shortfall in government provision, and I've already said in a clear way that this ministry needs more, through public-private partnerships, through relationships with multilateral organizations, as we proved after the hurricane. We have the capacity to raise the requisite funds needed to do the things that are important in this country. I would have an opportunity to also update you on the midterm budget about how the collaboration between various ministries will swell the existing funds that are allocated to the ministry. We fight tooth and nail for the teams that we work with to make sure that we get our fair share contributed to us, but we are heartened by the support that we're getting from a number of agencies that will in fact partner with us. I talked about not only hard, our efforts are in the right place and it's paying dividends. And so it isn't hard that produced the policy alone. But we're going to get the results. So and again, the reason we talk with members opposite is to also get your input. Because again, we think you know of some funding sources as well that we believe we'd be able to draw on. So I know, having spoken to the deputy, when we form the agriculture fund, we know that we'll be able to make a presentation in the financial services community to raise additional. Could you imagine that? That we raise funds to fund agriculture equipment, new startup businesses, etc. Those are the kinds of things that we expect that we're going to do. And so I just want to thank all of the partners and to say to the ministry staff that we appreciate you. We appreciate the Department of Agriculture and the work that they're doing, and the fact that our permanent secretary, who is a go-getter, who has worked throughout COVID. We say all the fellas who aren't as young as they used to be, try, stay home, work on your computer. The permanent secretary, Barry Wilmore, the FO, Brickell, they came out and they worked throughout this COVID-19. For all of the staff members of the Gladstone Road Research Center, we appreciate you. To all the persons in Marine Resources, Greg and the entire team, we appreciate you. The BAIC, all the persons who came in and conducted the survey to determine how much crops, livestock we have in inventory, who put together the database on all of our storage facilities. We want to say special thanks to all of you at BAIC for the work that you're doing, for all the handicraft team that have conducted training in a wide range of areas throughout the year, for the return of Bahama art. We really appreciate what BAIC and Greg Colley and the team is doing in refurbishing the industrial plant that they have on Soldier Road and of course Gladstone Road. And we want to welcome Antonius Roberts into the industrial park as well, and the work that he is doing. We want to thank BAMSI for all of the work that they're doing and working in difficult conditions, and of course making sure that we ready the school for our children. We want to thank BAS for talented young leadership under the able guidance of Mark Humes, the veterinarians there, the plant scientists, for all the work that you continue to do to protect the Bahamian food system, to also protect plant health and animal health. Many persons do not know BASPA is putting together a registration for food so that we're in a position, if the case there's a recall, we're able to check very quickly to determine if people are compliant with it. They are the ones who are determining whether or not foods are suitable to come into the Bahamas. So don't buy into the fake news and the talks on social media about what's appropriate, not appropriate. Just contact BASPA. They'll conduct the requisite study. I want to thank them for putting in place the plan to expand our laboratory system to work with UB to ensure that we have a national laboratory system inclusive of redundancy to do a wide range of studies. I want to thank the Food Technology Unit for leading the charge along with BAIC and BAMSI in food processing. So I want to thank all of the staff members throughout the Family Island. We appreciate you because of the work that you do. We are going to be able to create, as my colleague said, an agriculture revolution, a marine resources revolution. And finally, to the regatta community, and this is part two of the finally, to the regatta community. We appreciate the work that you have been doing over the years, your commitment to regatta. We have met with sporting federations. Out of the 23 that we were provided with, I believe we have 18 of them have agreed or offered no objection to sailing becoming the national sport of the Bahamas. And so we are steadily working towards that end. We have spoken with former ministers of agriculture and sport, both in the PLP and the FNM, that support this initiative. And so in the fullness of time, working in conjunction with the Minister of Sports, we intend to bring this to Cabinet for approval, and we will support the Minister and the Prime Minister in whatever determination they make beyond that point. We simply want to simply participate in helping to deliver that baby that has been promised by successive administrations. We are on our way in regatta to expanding the inventory of regattas throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We have funded quite a few of them, at least 18 of youth regatta, and of course adult regatta, similar number. The best of the best this year. We fully expect to have all boats eligible for entry, since some of the regattas had in fact been cancelled. And we are looking to work with Minister Jeff Lloyd in rejuvenating interest in boat building and sail making as a firm industry. That is why we pumped more money into Exuma to assist their youth regatta program. They have a wonderful academy. We are in discussions with persons at the Nassau Yacht Club with a view of creating a national academy for sailing in general. And we want to thank the Star Sailors League participants who came to the Bahamas and have made the Bahamas their home for, I think, the last 7 years, having the grand finality of Olympians, world champions come to use Montague Foreshore as the area for their finale. And so to the regatta community, we are happy that we are emerging out of this lockdown so we could resume regattas on the Family Island. We know the role it plays in developing communities throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We are producing, along with Patricia Mikolas, a wonderful documentary. And so we hope to execute that final contract in order to get her started interviewing all the luminaries in regatta. I wish to remind the member for East Grand Bahama and the member for Central and the member for West Grand Bahama, member for Pine Ridge, we agreed to make sure we have a boat that we jointly fund to get a vessel in regatta in Grand Bahama. And I think that ought to be a weighted arrangement, meaning those that have the most resources should pay the most. And so in that regard, the Minister of Finance, we are certainly looking forward to your substantial contribution. While each of us look in our ashtray for the additional money to augment what you are putting in. Sailing is important in Bahamas. It's a part of our identity. And I think it's safe to say it's a part of our national DNA. To support sailing. I want to say to my wife and daughter who've made incredible sacrifice while we're here working in the midst of COVID, trying to address emergency issues, that I so appreciate you and thank you and value your contribution. You know, gentlemen, ladies, our wives oftentimes are like God. They are so gracious to us even when we don't deserve it. And so I want to say, you know, that I love you, and I appreciate the sacrifice. And then to Sister Laura Benson, who's listening, my mother in Yellow Elder Garden, whose prayers have me here, so I don't feel lonely like many of my colleagues. That even when we're not walking in the will of God and under the umbrella of salvation, your prayers have kept us and sustained us through the most difficult times and the most horrible set of personal decisions. And so I want to say to my mother that I absolutely, unconditionally love you. And to the residents of Marco City, I cry with you, I hurt with you, I work along with you and on your behalf. Love you. We'll see you this weekend as we continue our distribution, appliances in this case, as well as we'll continue the distribution of hurricane supplies. God bless you. Mr. Deputy, I support this budget and I am confident this administration is going to continue to work in the best interest of the Bahamian people who we all care for. No one political organization has a monopoly on love for the Bahamian people, and we have to find a way to work across the political divide in these very difficult times so that we can construct a nation that would be the envy of the world. God bless you. Love you.
Thank you.